Hi, I'm Blake Lively, and I'm going to be taking the BuzzFeed quiz, which iconic Blake Lively character?
Hi besties, I am Bashan Lashari with Corevanta. Today we should discuss about the
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. October 3rd to you here, 2025. I got all of your stories for your rush hour ride home, and we got a lot to talk about. We got Taylor Swift, Blake Lively. We've got the government shutdown. We've got the Bachelor DUI. I mean, there's a ton to break into here. We're going to start right away with the Taylor Swift news of a song that might be about Blake Lively. Some people disagree. My overall thoughts on the album: I always find it interesting. I don't call myself a Swiftie, but I always find it interesting how people are so emotional when they receive an album. Some people are really upset it didn't meet the mark and the expectations are so high. I think with music there's this dopamine rush that comes from like knowing the lyrics to your song. You know, whatever that anthem is that you sing at the Sweet Caroline. I don't owe you. Know you release this love when you know a song and there's it. Takes some familiarity. So maybe you listen to the album a couple times and you go, yeah, there's 3 or 4 hits on there. You're not going to bat 1,000, right? Either way, I don't have any defense of Taylor Swift. I just find it interesting that how beloved she is, that her fan base, will buy tickets all over the world to see her and then wait till midnight to have a glass of wine and listen to the album. And it's cool. It's cool. So much credit to the Swiftie crowd for having passion all these years with art. Taylor does a great job of giving enough breadcrumbs to make it appear that way. It seems obvious, the Gucci reference, the flower reference to the florals, although the whiskey reference doesn't exactly hit, as Blake Lively did have an alcohol brand, but she doesn't drink, so maybe it's not whiskey. Who knows? It could apply. It's one of those things. I have no idea if that's about Blake Lively, but I do find it interesting. People on Reddit have. The psychology of it fascinates me. That sweet hit you get when you recognize a lyric, that aha, when the melody becomes your own. It's the same rush you feel shouting Sweet Caroline in a pub after midnight. It's communal catharsis. Maybe that's why first listens divide people. You need familiarity, that invisible handshake between art and listener. After 2 or 3 replays, suddenly it's genius. You find 3, maybe 4 tracks that punch through, and the rest quietly grow on you. Music's never about batting 1,000. It's about emotion over perfection. Now, I'm not here waving a defense flag for Taylor. She doesn't need one. What interests me is the passion. How millions wait till midnight, glasses of wine poised, ready to breathe in every syllable like scripture. Love her or roll your eyes. You have to respect the architecture of that devotion. She builds breadcrumbs into her songs, cryptic clues that let fans play detective. And that's where Blake Lively stumbles into the crosshairs, that there's a Gucci reference, a flower motif, the whisper of florals. Details that feel almost surgically aimed at Blake's designer-polished aesthetic. But then there's a whiskey line, and the debate twists. Blake Lively owns an alcohol-free beverage brand. She doesn't drink. So does that lyric really point to her? Or is it a decoy? The fandom splits down the middle. Reddit threads turn into tribunals. One user insists, if cancelled is really about Blake, it's not flattering, it's confession. It's saying there was no smear campaign, only self-inflicted downfall. 83,351. And that phrase, girl bossing too close to the sun. That's lyrical alchemy. Straight from Greek tragedy. Icarus melting under ambition's heat. It's a line that cuts through glamour, exposing the underbelly of perfection. Whether Taylor meant Blake or not almost doesn't matter. The lyric works because it mirrors the modern Hollywood myth. The woman who flew too high on curated charm until the wax gave way. Blake Lively's trajectory has always danced along that myth. She was once the golden girl, magazine covers, influencer dinners, effortless wit beside Ryan Reynolds' sarcasm. But fame has gravity, and when you orbit too close to its core, you burn. People started whispering about PR control, selective alliances, hidden feuds. Taylor once called Blake a friend. Now her lyrics sound suspiciously like an autopsy. Was it betrayal? Competition? Or creative misdirection? Maybe that's the trick. Every lyric a hall of mirrors. The song becomes a canvas for everyone's projections. To some, it's an ode. To others, an accusation. That's the genius, and the danger, of emotional storytelling. But enough of that musical heartbreak, because Hollywood never sleeps and neither does chaos. Cue the next headline. The Bachelor's own Melissa Rye, taking center stage for all the wrong reasons. Police reports, flashing lights, a DWI, and a claim that she was the victim of a hit and run. Now, did she get hit, or did she run? The internet can't decide. She's been on Dancing with the Stars. One might expect rhythm enough to balance through a sobriety test. But according to the officer, her eyes were bloodshot, speech slurred, the unmistakable scent of metabolized alcoholic beverage in the air. It's classic Hollywood irony. Maybe she was sampling one of Blake Lively's alcohol-free Betty Buzz mocktails. If so, the irony writes itself. Yet anyone who's ever been sleep-deprived knows. Sometimes bloodshot eyes are just the price of life. I've seen parents look worse after one night with a teething baby. Still, she didn't look merely tired, she looked defeated. Swollen from something deeper than exhaustion. We don't judge, we observe. Because in Hollywood, appearances are verdicts, and the jury is always online. Now, before we detour into the legal circus awaiting Blake and Baldoni, we pause for that inevitable sponsor moment. Because even in chaos, capitalism finds its microphone. Today's Rush Hour is brought to you by Tropical Smoothie Cafe, paradise in a blender, protein in a cup. I'm half convinced their peanut paradise shake could solve global fatigue. My producer swears by their Greek yogurt bowl, 26 grams of protein, and a smile worthy of an influencer reel. Pair it with kale, chia seeds, or whatever makes you feel like your life's together. There, advert done, conscience clean. Back to the drama. Speaking of chaos, let's talk robots. DoorDash has introduced its first fleet of autonomous delivery pods. Compact little droids rolling around Phoenix like caffeinated toddlers. They're 1/10 the size of a car, zipping at 20 miles an hour down bike lanes and pavements. Guided by GPS and LiDAR. On paper, genius. In practice, another nail in the coffin for human jobs. Because when you're begging for 20 quid an hour, Silicon Valley smiles and says, how about we replace you with a robot instead? As someone who's hustled through freelance gigs, Uber, Lyft, you name it, I get it. Once upon a time, I nearly became a Postmates driver. Sat through the orientation, took one look at the PowerPoint, and thought, nope. I draw the line at delivering lukewarm burritos to people who don't tip. Yet here we are in 2025. Watching robots do it for free. Soon skateboarders will be hitching rides on them, TikTokers racing them for content. Adorable? Maybe. Existentially depressing? Definitely. And just when you think consumerism couldn't get cheekier, Maxwell House, yes, the coffee giant, announces a rebrand. Temporarily, it's now Maxwell Apartment. Because apparently nobody can afford an actual house anymore. It's a joke so sharp it stings. They've been around for 133 years, and now they're appealing to renters, offering a 12-month coffee lease, like a landlord with caffeine perks. Late-stage capitalism really said, if you can't buy a home, at least buy our irony. So picture it. Maxwell Studio, Maxwell Flat, Maxwell Basement with a broken boiler. A marketing stunt dressed as empathy, but beneath the humor it hits a raw truth. People are struggling, trading dreams for survival. And yet, in the same breath, we'll spend hours dissecting whether Taylor's new track secretly annihilated Blake Lively's public image. That's modern society. One hand gripping coffee, the other scrolling outrage. Back in the comments section, the Swifties are erupting. Christine writes in, I can't stand the Taylor hate, she's just expressing art. And she's right. You can join that conversation on the community page. The debate never stops. But it's fascinating, this parallel between pop and politics, scandal and substance. We invest emotionally in people we'll never meet because they mirror the drama we fear to face ourselves. Taylor Swift doesn't just write songs. She crafts Rorschach tests. Blake Lively doesn't just pose for cameras, she curates identity. And we, the audience, project our insecurities onto their glamour until gossip becomes gospel. That's the brilliance, and the madness, of Hollywood storytelling. One lyric becomes evidence, one look becomes betrayal, and suddenly, you've got Reddit threads rivaling legal documents. Which brings us neatly to the storm gathering. On Blake's horizon, the lawsuit whispers the Baldoni saga, the courtroom chess game about to unfold. But that, my friends, is a tale for part 2. Because while the city slows for rush hour, Hollywood is only accelerating. Fame colliding with fallout, and a headline waiting to explode. There's something haunting about the way fame and judgment walk hand in hand in Hollywood. Like two sides of a mirror, reflecting both brilliance and betrayal. And nowhere is that truer than in the story that's been unfolding between Taylor Swift, Blake Lively, and Justin Baldoni. A saga that's now reached courtrooms, headlines, and late-night whisper networks across Los Angeles. What started as art, as a song, as a reflection of personal pain, somehow spiraled into subpoenas, PR manipulations, and accusations of digital espionage. So tonight on Corevanta, we're peeling back that glittery Hollywood skin, the PR smiles, the press releases, and exposing the nerve that's been throbbing beneath. Because what's happening here isn't just about one pop star's lyrics or one actor's lawsuit. It's about power, privacy, and the price of perception in a world built on image. It began, oddly enough, with a conversation about music, about Taylor Swift, and a song that hit nerves across the industry. Our friend Christine shared what Taylor had to say about it, and her words carried that familiar Swiftian mix of poetry and self-defense. She said the song was about having her own experiences of mass judgment, being at the center of many dramatic, scandalous moments of my career. You could feel the weight of every public crucifixion she'd endured, every time the internet decided it was her turn to burn. Taylor talked about how, when you've been through that kind of scrutiny, you start seeing the world differently. You start recognizing the storm before it hits someone else. You watch people crumble under collective outrage, and you think, maybe they'll come out of this tougher, wiser. Maybe they'll survive what I barely did. And that, to me, is what sets Taylor apart from most of Hollywood. She doesn't discard people because others tell her to. She judges them by how they treat her, not by how the crowd chants their names. It's a brutal philosophy one learned from years of surviving internet lynch mobs and celebrity witch hunts. And that's what made her latest song, Cancelled, feel like more than music. It was a mirror, one that reflected not just her battles, but everyone's who's ever been publicly judged. Some fans speculated it might even be about her friend Brittany Mahomes, the wife of NFL star Patrick Mahomes, given their different political ideologies and the swirl of attention that followed their unlikely friendship. But in truth, it wasn't about one woman. It was about all of them, all of us. Now I'll be honest with you, I can't imagine what it's like to live at Taylor's level, to have your every move dissected, your motives questioned, your private life treated like public property. But I do know this, the internet is a strange, unforgiving place. It builds you up, only to tear you down, and it never runs out of stones to throw. I've seen it in my own little corner of media. People who love you one day and label you creepy the next. That word stung, not because it was true, but because it came from strangers who didn't know a damn thing about me. My wife and I laughed about it, turned it into a joke. She even started calling me Creepy Dave. But underneath that humor was a truth that everyone in the public eye knows. You can't win. You can only endure. Fame, even the smallest version of it, comes with a toll, a tax on your peace. Whether you're a pop star, a YouTuber, or a baseball player, the moment you step into the light, someone somewhere will decide you don't deserve it. You'll be at the top of your game, living your dream, and they'll still find a reason to hate you. Look at the Red Sox game last week. Two young pitchers, both barely in their 20s, living their childhood fantasies on the biggest stage. One has the night of his life, 12 strikeouts, the crowd chanting his name. The other, after one bad inning, walks off the field thinking he's failed the world. Same game. Same dream. Completely different verdicts. That's fame. That's the madness of modern judgment. And that's where Taylor's message hits deeper than most people realize. She's saying, stop letting the mob decide who you are. Stop handing your worth to the loudest voices online. The older you get, the more you realize your only compass is your core, your values, your family, the people who see you when the cameras are off. Taylor lives by that now. She's not perfect, none of them are, but she's resilient in a way that frightens her critics. And that resilience is contagious. Now I'll say this, Cancelled might be my favorite song she's ever released. Not because I've been cancelled, but because I've seen it happen to others. I've seen kind, well-intentioned people destroyed for past mistakes, often by those who wouldn't survive 5 minutes under the same microscope. That's the hypocrisy of perfection culture. We preach empathy but reward humiliation. We call it accountability when it's often entertainment. But Taylor, she thrives in chaos. She's learned to take that chaos, distill it into art, and turn it back on her accusers. She can't even look at her DMs anymore. The toxicity would melt steel. And yet, she keeps creating, keeps giving. She's not some faded legend coasting on one old hit. She's relentless, evolving, rewriting her own narrative album after album. That's power, not the red carpet kind, but the kind that comes from surviving the storm and still choosing to sing. And speaking of storms, that brings me to the next act in this twisted Hollywood drama. The court case that's quietly shaking the industry's PR foundations. It involves Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively, and a woman named Jen Abel. And what's emerging looks less like a lawsuit and more like a chess game with secrets as currency. See, tucked inside the glitter of Hollywood are PR firms. The shadow architects who build reputations and bury scandals. One of those firms, JonesWorks, run by Stephanie Jones, has now found itself at the heart of a legal mess involving Blake Lively's team. Here's how it unfolded. Jen Abel, a former executive at JonesWorks, alleged that her ex-boss, Stephanie Jones, and her team orchestrated what she calls a sham lawsuit. This fake legal action, she says, was designed to justify the theft of her private communications, her iCloud messages, her emails, her digital life. The supposed lawsuit, filed under the name Van Zon Incorporated, an inactive company allegedly linked to Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, was never actually served to any real person. It existed legally, but only as a ghost, a facade. And yet, through it, JonesWorks managed to subpoena Abel's data and hand it directly to Blake Lively. Think about that for a second. A lawsuit that never went anywhere, used to gain access to private data, data that might have contained sensitive communications about other Hollywood figures, including Justin Baldoni. And all of it done under the guise of legality. No trial, no judge assigned, no defendants served, just a paper trail leading straight into someone's iPhone. When the case hit the judge's desk, the documents painted a story of manipulation. The same day the fake lawsuit was filed, Jones allegedly told an employee not to work for Abel, warning that her business wouldn't be around much longer. Then, once the subpoena was received, the firm surrendered the entire contents of Abel's phone to Blake's camp. Later, the case was quietly dismissed, as if it had never happened. But by then, the damage was done. And here's where it gets darker. Abel later discovered that months after leaving the firm, her old boss still had access to her iCloud account, still reading her messages, still inside her private life. If that's true, it's not just unethical, it's criminal. Now, the question before the court was simple. Was it legal? Was this all a clever loophole or a blatant abuse of power? The presiding judge smiles lies something darker. A world where image matters more than integrity, and truth is just another story to spin. And right now, that story is finally being told. The thing about lies in Hollywood is that they never stay buried. They're like cracks under the surface. You can paint over them, you can polish the marble, but eventually, the truth seeps through. And that's exactly what's happening now. As the dust begins to settle over the scandal surrounding Blake Lively, Stephanie Jones, and Justin Baldoni, what was once whispered in corners of PR offices has now become an open wound, bleeding into the public record. The courtroom has replaced the press junket, and the very machinery that built these celebrities' images is now tearing them apart. When Judge Lyman handed down his decision, the sound of it echoed far beyond New York's federal courthouse. To most, it was a quiet procedural ruling, just another day in the endless blur of Hollywood lawsuits. But to those who've been following this saga closely, it was something seismic. The judge's words confirmed what many had suspected for months. That Blake Lively's team, through Stephanie Jones and her firm JonesWorks, had weaponized the legal system itself in an attempt to gather intelligence and possibly destroy reputations. For Justin Baldoni's camp, it was vindication. For Blake Lively's, it was damage control. Inside industry circles, the whispers began immediately. Was Blake aware? Did she sanction it? Or was she manipulated by her own PR strategist? The latter became the favored narrative, that Blake had been misled, that she was a victim of Stephanie Jones's machinations. But in Hollywood, innocence is rarely pure, and guilt is never simple. The deeper this story goes, the more it starts to look like a network of mutual convenience, where everyone stood to gain something, until it all collapsed. Behind closed doors, insiders describe panic within Blake Lively's circle. The actress, known for her flawless image and ironclad brand, now finds herself associated with words like data breach, misuse, and unauthorized access. Her husband, Ryan Reynolds, reportedly furious at the situation's escalation, has pulled back from any public mention of the case. Their once impenetrable family brand, the wholesome power couple who could do no wrong, now trembles under scrutiny. But let's not forget, this story isn't just about legality, it's about morality. About how far someone will go to protect their image, even if it means compromising someone else's privacy. It's about how Hollywood's obsession with control often blurs the line between strategy and sin. When you read the 47-page court document, which we did, line by line, the details are chilling. Abel wasn't notified that her phone had been subpoenaed. She wasn't given a chance to contest it. The subpoena was issued, data extracted, and the lawsuit dismissed, all before she even knew her personal life had been raided. To call it unethical feels almost too soft. It was surgical, precise, premeditated, and predatory. And that's what the judge seemed to recognize. His language was careful but cutting. He didn't accuse anyone of criminal conduct outright, but his refusal to dismiss the state claim spoke volumes. It said, "This doesn't smell right." It said, "Someone needs to answer for this." Justin Baldoni's legal team wasted no time celebrating the partial victory. Their statement, though restrained, carried a clear subtext. The truth is beginning to surface. To them, this isn't just about winning a case, it's about reclaiming narrative. For months, Baldoni had been painted as manipulative, controlling, and emotionally calculating. Accusations amplified by selective leaks and anonymous sources. But now, with evidence suggesting that those leaks may have originated from unlawfully obtained data, the story flips. Suddenly, Justin isn't the villain. He's the victim of a smear campaign engineered through deception. And as this new narrative spreads, the ripple effect is brutal. Hollywood PR firms are quietly auditing their practices, terrified of being linked to similar tactics. Publicists who once bragged about getting things done by any means are now deleting emails, reviewing contracts, and praying they weren't CC'd on anything incriminating. The line between damage control and data crime has never looked thinner. Meanwhile, Stephanie Jones herself has gone silent. No statements. No interviews. Her once bustling office on Wilshire Boulevard has reportedly thinned out. Staff either laid off or choosing to leave. Sources say she's been advised to lay low, though some whisper she's preparing a counterclaim. A desperate attempt to shift blame back onto Abel. But even that, insiders say, might backfire spectacularly. Because the digital trail doesn't lie. Every subpoena, every IP log, every metadata entry from that iCloud extraction points to one conclusion. That this wasn't an accident. It was a calculated act of desperation. Blake Lively's position in all this is trickier. Publicly, she said nothing. Privately, those close to her claim she's devastated, insisting she had no idea the data had been obtained unlawfully. But the silence is deafening. Because in Hollywood, silence isn't neutrality, it's strategy. And right now every word, every move, is being studied like evidence. There's irony here. For years, Blake and Taylor Swift were seen as the epitome of female empowerment in Hollywood, supporting one another through public storms, projecting an image of loyalty and sisterhood. But while Taylor turned her pain into art, Blake seems to have turned hers into litigation. And the contrast is striking. Taylor faced judgment head-on, using it to craft songs that empowered millions. Blake, on the other hand, allegedly let her team weaponize that same culture of judgment to protect her image. The difference between healing and hiding, that's the real moral divide. Justin Baldoni's reaction to all of this has been fascinating. Rather than lashing out, he's embraced transparency. His public statements have centered on integrity, forgiveness, and systemic reform. He's spoken not as an accuser, but as a man urging the industry to wake up, to stop pretending that manipulation is part of the game. His calmness, in contrast to the chaos around him, has only amplified his credibility. And that's where the story takes on an almost cinematic symmetry. Because for once, Hollywood's script has flipped. The man accused of deceit becomes the truth teller. The PR architect of perfection becomes the subject of exposure. And the actress whose brand depended on control now faces the one thing she can't manage, uncertainty. But make no mistake, this is far from over. The surviving claims in Abel's lawsuit are now moving into discovery. That means more evidence, more subpoenas, and potentially more revelations about who knew what and when. Emails, messages, internal memos, all of it could soon become public record. And if any of those communications implicate high-profile figures, this could explode into one of the most consequential PR scandals in years. Some insiders already call it Hollywood's Cambridge Analytica moment. Because at its core, this isn't just about celebrity drama, it's about data ethics, privacy rights, and the abuse of influence. It's about whether fame grants immunity from accountability. And for once, it looks like the answer might finally be no. As for Blake Lively, her silence might buy time, but not trust. The internet never forgets, and in the age of receipts, screenshots, and public court documents, narratives can no longer be manufactured behind closed doors. What's fascinating, though, is how swiftly the public's empathy shifts. Once they realize who the real puppeteers are. Thanks for watching. Subscribe my channel Corevanta for more updates. With Sardar Zuriat Abbas Khan Lashari.